Hey guys, Wolfie here and welcome back to the channel. As always, the usual disclaimer. Any opinion here is mine and mine alone. Now, this is a special presentation tied to a couple of things I'm going to be going over here. The first and foremost is going to be tied to Volume 9, Chapter 7, alongside anything beyond, instead of like the remaining 3 chapters in for this particular volume and beyond Volume 9 in general. So I'm not going to waste any time. Here we go. So we're going to start off with this particular hint at the end of Volume 8. Now, this particular scene here is when Penny transfers her Winter Maiden powers over to Winter Schnee herself. Now, some people may see this as somewhat insignificant for this video, but I feel it carries a very significant clue in the remaining 3 chapters of Volume 9. Now, you have to remember, when it comes down to what Winter says, regarding her, about when it comes to getting the Winter Maiden powers, Winter refers to herself as a mindless sheep just following orders. Penny saw Winter as her friend. And it's you see Penny seeing the best in people. And you have to think about this particular scene. Now, what does this have to do with RWBY in Volume 9? Now, if you look very closely here, this is Volume 9, Chapter 5. This is the chapter before the Bumblebee kiss. Now, you see here, RWBY is holding on to a blade that is tied to Penny. And one has to think about it. RWBY has seen Penny's blade before in this particular volume. So if you pay very close attention here, is that RWBY is meeting up with the blacksmith for the very first time, although it's an illusion. And then you see here in Chapter 5, you see a part of a weapon here that's being forged. Now, let's see here. So, and then you see here, then not long afterwards, to see if I have the image, I don't think so. So she puts, when she realizes that Penny's weapon was a dagger, and it had a face of Alex. So she puts it down, and then you see RWBY looking at another weapon. So it looks like it's a dual-sided blade. If you look at this still very carefully, and I'm going to zoom in just for reference. So it looks like here, you see here, this particular weapon is a dual-sided blade, because you have a small blade right here. I'm going to zoom it in. This is as good as I can get to zooming it in. So you get to see a very small blade on one side, and then you get to see a slightly larger blade on the other. Now, this is kind of significant in a sense because this particular weapon appears to have been owned by Summer Rose herself. So if you really think about RWBY's weapon, Crescent Rose, which I had to do this zoom in as the best I could so I can, get Weiss out of the whole thing here. But if you remember, those certain, if you take into account these hints, where we see Crescent Rose, a dual-sided blade that looks like Summer's weapon, alongside the dagger, which the Penny's blade was disguised as, we're probably going to be seeing a major change to Crescent Rose. We're going to be seeing an involvement of RWBY's weapon. So that way she has a blade on each side of Crescent Rose. Alongside a modification to the scythe side of the weapon. And this significance could be certain things being a double-edged sword, so it could be that. But I do feel more strongly towards Crescent Rose, RWBY's weapon, gaining a massive change, meaning that you get to see a second blade on the other side, and that one being a smaller blade. The dagger in the form of that of RWBY's, of the dagger that was disguised as one of Penny's blades. So it looks like here, based on these clues, that Penny's weapon will be a part of Crescent Rose. Just as Penny's powers, and specifically the Winter Maiden powers, are now a part of Winter Schnee. Because Penny thought highly of RWBY. Just like she view Winter as in a high regard. Because both Winter and RWBY really saw Penny as a person, as someone, as one of their own. Now we're going to look at this still here for Volume 9, Chapter 3. Now, granted, this is not a very, good one to use, but it comes down to a certain item for Volume 5. And more specifically, I want to say is Volume 5, Chapter 7. Now, if you remember how the whole thing for Volume 5, Chapter 7, RWBY asked about Beacon's Relic, the crown of choice. See here? So this is right here. These are the 4 relics right here. So this is kind of like, want to take a visual here. And then you have to remember, it was also brought up again, the relics in chapter, I was going to say Chapter 6 is Volume 6. Where, RWBY asked, about the relics, all that stuff. And then we do know early on in Volume 6 about the origins of Salem. So we do know that one of the relics here is the crown. Now, if you really think about this whole thing pertaining to the crown and the hint for Volume 5, Chapter 7, is there a possibility that the crown, which Oz said that he made it more challenging to find, is the crown in Ever After? Because you have to remember the whole battle with back in Volume 3 where Cinder fully obtained the Fall Maiden powers at the end of that volume. We find out in Volume 5 that no one has the Vale's relic, which is the crown of choice. And it comes down to whether or not the crown is in Ever After, and if RWBY and or RWBY come back to Remnant, they just may have the crown of choice in their possession. Which is something one should really consider, because you have to know that when it comes down to the relic from Mistral, which is the Lamp of Knowledge, and Atlas's relic, the Staff of Creation, that's in Salem's possession. And we may see RWBY and or RWBY have the crown of choice in their possession. However, I do think that Salem's is going to be stopped, because Cinder, you have to remember Volume 8. I want to say it was Volume 8, where it was Cinder who asked the final question. Although Cinder had completely lied to Salem about RWBY asking it, when we do know it's Cinder. So Cinder may be a bit of a double crosser in the eyes of some. In my personal opinion, Cinder is a double crosser. Because Cinder is lying and betraying Salem, while at the same time doing her own thing with almost everybody else. And should RWBY and RWBY come back, or I should say and or RWBY, should they come back with the crown of choice, should it be in Ever After, Salem is screwed. And this is considering that we don't know anything. I would say we don't know anything. We don't know much about the Sword of Destruction and Vacuum. And then another thing, if you really think about these relics, it kind of ties down to Team RWBY in the sense of not so much origin, but their abilities themselves. Because if you think about it, I'm going to zoom this in as good as I can. Ruby kind of represents the crown of choice. Blake, and this is based on her knowledge of the books, certain things that have been going on, like in various parts of the show, especially so in Volume 9, Blake is pretty much the lamp of knowledge. With Weiss, if you think about her summoning abilities, in sense of summoning, like, Grimm that she has had a hand in defeating, because you're seeing, like, things here and there, she's combined, her summoning aspect of what she can do is evolving. Weiss's creations of, like, Varian Grimm to fight by her side is tied to the Staff of Knowledge. With Yang, what, you know, it's, you're going to say, when people create, it can also be destroyed. The Sword of Destruction. So, Yang can destroy, Weiss can create, Blake in her knowledge of the books, which is pretty much helping the team out in this case, and Ruby's decision making. So if Ruby is the one who can manage to get her hands on the crown of choice, Ruby is going to be the one that chooses the fate of the world. And again, this is entirely separate, you know, from the story up to Chapter 7 in Volume 9. So, to recap everything here, when it comes down to that scene from the end of Volume 8, to be more specific, like Penny being a part of Winter in the abilities, in the sense of like the Winter Maiden powers, and possibly what Penny can do outside of that, Penny's blades will be a part of Crescent Rose. Now, if you look at the Red Prince in Volume 9 early on, we're probably going to be hearing more about the Crown of Choice, Beacon's Relic. The relic that Oz himself made it more challenging to find. Meaning that Penny's choices, her sacrifice, might be more impactful to everything beyond Volume 9. Now, as for beyond Volume 9 itself, it's like story aspect, that's going to be a completely separate video. I do have some notes on that written already. It's just a matter of like figuring certain things out in the sense of like what sources I can bring up for that video. So with that, I'm done with this video. With Wolvie here signing off. I will catch you all on the flip side.